Sounds great.
Okay.
And thank you, Tanya, and folks with the Today's Students Coalition for inviting us and JFF to join this discussion and to talk with you all about dual enrollment. We greatly appreciate it. It's one of my favorite topics. I'm Erica Cuevas, Director of Education Policy at JFF, and I am on our policy and advocacy team based in the DC area. I'll pass it to my colleague, Anna O'Connor.
Hi, everyone. Anna O'Connor. I'm a Senior Director in JFF Solutions Design and Delivery Unit. I've been at JFF for 9 years now and oversee a portfolio of work that really falls under our Education to Career Pathways umbrella, which includes lots and lots of work in partnership across the country for those who are scaling and innovating in dual enrollment. So excited to share what we're seeing and observing and learning through that space.
Tanya, would you like us to jump right in?
Well, can we have Maxwell? Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Vashti will have you introduce yourself after real fast.
Alrighty. My name is Maxwell Field, and I'm a Today's Student Coalition Student Ambassador Fellow. I am a Carlson School of Management student at the University of Minnesota, and I did 3 years of dual enrollment, so that's what I'm going to go over later.
Yeah, and hi everybody. My name is Vash Teacher Hale. I am a student at Colorado State University, Pueblo, and I'm a junior right now. And I also did a dual enrollment in my high school years, starting my freshman year. And I'll talk about that more as well later.
Great. Okay, Erica, I'll hand it on over to you.
Great, thanks. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I hope you all can see my slides. So a little bit about JFF up at the top. JFF stands for Jobs for the Future. We're a national nonprofit organization that seeks to drive transformation across our nation's education and workforce development systems to ensure economic success for people, businesses, and communities. We have a big North Star that by 2033, 75 million Americans who are currently facing barriers to economic advancement will be in quality jobs. And from a policy team perspective, we're looking to advance nonpartisan practice-informed policy solutions to help improve pathways to those good jobs. You met Anna and I, and I'm greatly appreciative to be co-presenting with one of our leading experts on dual enrollment. So thank you, Anna, for joining us. So here's a bit of an overview of what we'll be talking about. So we'll give an overview about dual enrollment, what it is, national momentum, some data, and also persistent challenges that we continue to see. We'll talk about what dual enrollment looks like at JFF, some of our core strategies and ways in which we're partnering across the country with states and regions to innovate and to be more strategic in this space. I'll also mention some of our key state and federal policy priorities and would love to open it up at the end for Q&A. And throughout, we'll pause to ensure the student ambassadors are able to weigh in and add their perspectives as well. But that's a quick overview. So dual enrollment, what is it? Dual enrollment programs are essentially partnerships between high schools and at least one institution of higher education where high school students are able to take intentional and rigorous, authentic post-secondary experiences and college courses that lead to officially transcripted and transferable college credit at a recognized post-secondary degree or credential. So this is the idealized form of dual enrollment. I do want to acknowledge up front that for today, we'll be using the term dual enrollment, but there are a variety of different models out there that enable high school students to earn college credit while still in high school. Some of our partners did a national scan and found that there are about over 30 terms used across the country that really refer to this model. So whether that's dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment, early college, high schools, college and high school, there's a lot of different terms. But for today, we'll largely be talking about dual enrollment, and that's the word we'll be using. So why does dual enrollment matter? Well, there are a variety of different reasons. If we're really looking at some of the challenges across systems, first starting at the high school level, we know that a large share of students who are admitted into college and they plan to attend actually never show up that first fall semester. And that percentage is even higher when we're looking at low-income students. And so dual enrollment can be a really good strategy to help smooth that pathway between high school and college. If we're looking at the post-secondary level and challenges there, we know that first-generation students in particular are least likely to return back after their first year in college. And the percentage increases when we're looking at Black students and Hispanic students. And so really thinking about how can dual enrollment be that motivator and that mechanism to allow students to continue on. And then we're looking at jobs and careers and also just affordability generally. We know higher education costs continue to go up. More and more students are taking out loans and debt. And when we think about who's taking on that debt and who's defaulting, it's more likely to be Black students. Low-income students are more likely to borrow larger amounts and also default. And so dual enrollment can largely serve as a mechanism for affordability because many states across the country offer these opportunities for free for students to earn those credits early on. So a few of many, many reasons why dual enrollment matters. And quickly around the power of dual enrollment. So I want to quickly talk through some of the major themes that we've been seeing in this space. JFF did a look back at the origin of dual enrollment to see how the movement has evolved over the last 2+ decades. And we found out a couple of things. So first, beginning at the very start of dual enrollment, we were noticing it was a part of a longer list of college access interventions. And at that time, early on, there were a lot of skeptics. There were people questioning the rigor of these courses and whether or not they were true, authentic college experiences. So around 2002, there were standards that were developed for concurrent enrollment and dual enrollment. And we now have a national accreditor for dual enrollment, and that's one of our partners, NACEP. At the same time, we saw philanthropy really invest a lot into these programs, particularly early college high schools. And the Gates Foundation in particular invested over $29 million in early colleges. And JFF worked with them to expand in a variety of areas, including Texas, I believe Colorado as well, in a few different places. Around 2004, we saw dual enrollment was beginning to attract a lot of legislative attention and policy attention. And then that's when we started to see early results funnel up in terms of the positive effects of dual enrollment. If we zoom forward to 2008, there was a big recession during that time. And this is really when the education to career pathways movement started. We're seeing an increase in popularity for CTE programs, PTECs, and more movement in the policy space, both federally and across the states. And we're also seeing dual enrollment being a core strategy within college and career pathways, one of the core pillars, and it remains that way today. So if we think about now, 20+ years later, we've seen significant progress. I'll show a little bit more data about the expansion of dual enrollment, but we're still left with thinking about how can we scale these programs so more students can access them, as well as ensure that a variety of student populations can participate. So more around the national momentum, again, growing participation, especially in recent years around dual enrollment. We're seeing a larger share of community college students being dual enrollment students, and that has continued to increase since 2010. We're seeing more and more policies and bills being introduced and passed at the state level in particular to support dual enrollment. And we're also seeing increased emphasis around strengthening partnerships between high schools and colleges to ensure that these are opportunities that are co-designed, they're rigorous, and they're leading to good transitions and supports for young people. So a little bit more about the data. The Community College Research Center put out some renewed data around dual enrollment. And what they found is that in the 2023-24 school year, roughly 2.8 million high school students across the country took at least one dual enrollment course. That was up from 2.5 million from the year prior. So what you're seeing here on this map is sort of the growth over 1 year from 2022-23 to 23-24. Many states saw a big leap in growth. So California, a 20% jump. Washington State, 27% jump, Nevada, 31, Texas, 12. So just within that year, significant growth in almost every state across the country. And when we think about where students are taking these courses, the majority are taking them at community colleges. And so this chart is really just showing the percentage of community college students that are dual enrollment students for the year 2022-23. In some states like Idaho, 57% of their community college students are dual enrollment students. That's very, very large. A large percentage also in Oregon, Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado. So really dual enrollment is serving as a community college enrollment strategy. So lots of great data coming out of the Community College Research Center. This is really just scratching the surface here. So I'll pause there and pass it to my colleague Anna, who will dig more into why dual enrollment works and what the evidence has been showing.
Yeah, thanks, Erica. So the national movement we see happening around dual enrollment is really built upon rigorous evidence that does show dual enrollment works. So in fact, it's one of the few educational strategies out there that has been tested and proven over time again and again to positively impact student success. So this chart, it's a simplified chart actually representing many, many studies published by the What Works Clearinghouse that shows the improvement index. So that basically means the expected change in percentile for an average student if that student was duly enrolled. So again, these impacts, they weren't just found in one study. Some of these measures, like the first one here, that's college attainment, was actually found in 5 studies that meet What Works Clearinghouse standards. These are very high standards for research and evaluation. So what is this telling us? These studies are telling us that dual enrollment increases the likelihood of staying and graduating in high school, enrolling, persisting, and graduating college. Next slide, Erica. So JFF and the College and High School Alliance have been partners for many, many years, and Erica is going to share briefly more about that later in this webinar. And we recently published a report all about the kind of multi-tiered effect we're seeing dual enrollment have that extends beyond just the students. So dual enrollment drives high school graduation rates, which is a high school accountability metric in nearly every single state system. And it's also providing high schools a chance to expand their academic offerings. So schools are no longer really limited by the teachers and the space they have at their high school. They can tap into the expertise and credentials of college instructors now. Erica already shared about how we're seeing dual enrollment is becoming a college enrollment strategy. That absolutely is true. Also, we're seeing students are more likely to succeed in college, which reduces the need for remedial coursework. That saves dollars for everyone across the system. In terms of states and communities, so studies are showing that states do see a financial return on investment with every dual enrollment dollar that they fund. The American Institute for Research, they're a big player in the dual enrollment evaluation space. They estimated the benefit of taking dual enrollment increases in individuals' net worth by about $33,000 a year. And when people make more money, they pay more taxes. So the community gains financial benefits from students taking dual enrollment as well. That estimated annual is $24,000 per year for the community for every single student. So not only are students academically achieving more, they're making more money, and the community is benefiting as well. And we're really starting to scratch the surface too and see some employer benefits, particularly their ability to recruit a skilled workforce earlier in the pipeline. Next slide. And yet, there's persistent challenges, particularly to access and to scale. So only about 10% of students participate, the majority being white students. There are a lot of challenges for rural communities, even though interestingly in this slide, they enroll 20% more students than urban high school students. But for me, this is telling us that access and scale, these are shared challenges across all kinds of communities, rural, suburban, and urban alike. Next slide. And even though more rural high school students are enrolling in these type of courses, what we're seeing is that they're actually more likely to carry the cost burden. And students are more likely to enroll if their parents have a college degree, meaning sometimes it's who you know that really matters, which we know can drive inequities. Next slide. And all of this data has led us at JFF to focus on solving largely these 5 challenges through our work and our partnerships that I'll describe in a little bit. So we know that the distance between high schools and colleges, that's an access issue. Once students are in the college course, how do we ensure that they are actively engaged through quality instruction? How do we support students through navigating what it means to be and to thrive as a college student? How do we scale and significantly scale beyond what we're already seeing scale happen right now by creating better systems? And then, yes, we want more students to take and complete dual enrollment, hard stop, but we also want to make sure that those students are taking what we're calling strategic dual enrollment courses, courses that accelerate a student toward degrees that are promising credentials. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but for now, I'll turn it over to Tanya.
Thank you. You all are doing such great work. I'm really excited to see these stats. And to me, um, looking at these outcomes, it's clear that there's a lot of work still that needs to be done. But as I was thinking about it, I was thinking about both you and Vashti and Maxwell about like your experiences within, pursuing like dual enrollment while you were, during your high school years. And as you see these different stats that are like showing up, which ones stand out to you the most in your experience as a student who was a dual enrollment student?
Yeah, so I could say I'm from a town of 700 in northern Minnesota, Twin Valley, Minnesota. Just shout out. But yeah, no. So I learned that one of the main draws toward dual enrollment in the rural side of things is that, like, for example, for farmers, I know them, right, and what they do is they take on these extra credits, right, and it helps limit the amount of time they need to spend away from the family farm business, which is a really, really big plus. And then I know for the small town people like me, like we have the benefit of like understanding that these local schools have these accessibility issues, but that through online things, which we might touch on a little bit later here, but like through online methods, it's still possible. And it's like I think awareness has been a much better thing in the small town kind of area where like we have less of an urge like within our schools to potentially limit the amount of people that kind of go away from our schools. But yeah, so that's kind of like what I've seen on the rural side of it.
Thank you. How about you, Vashti?
Yeah, so I can also speak on the rural aspect and also the aspect of like Hispanic and Black students not being enrolled as quite as much because I am from a Hispanic background. I actually like to tell people my high school is, if anybody know who Dolores Huerta is or Cesar Chavez, that's what my school is named after. So like we're definitely very rooted, especially in Southern Colorado and like Mexican culture. That's where Mexicans are. That's where the fields are. That's where we work. My family is field workers as well and they didn't have college education. I'm first gen. I'm navigating the system by myself. I also, all these numbers make sense completely. It also makes sense why 20% of students, I mean, it makes sense that the money burden is still there for me. If I didn't have my school paid throughout the concurrent enrollment, I wouldn't have done it as well. I mean, I don't have that money for that. Other students like me don't have that money for that. So I definitely can see that being a huge problem. Even if we have the opportunity, none of us could afford it, and that's what's a huge burden I see. And yeah, it just makes a lot of sense why students of color aren't quite enrolled yet. We're very just historically, people of color just aren't in these spaces, and we don't see ourselves in those spaces. I know when I first entered the community college, I was really scared. I was actually about to drop out until I was with other peers, and then professors I saw were like same color. I took like a bunch of Chicano study classes, and I got to learn more and kind of grow more comfortable with those spaces I was in. And that's all thanks to being in there really early, because being able to like see those spaces younger and like not having to do it by myself as well, it really helped me stay in it and actually finish my degree. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I want to jump in just a little bit because my boys' school does dual enrollment, like the school district we're in as a whole does dual enrollment, but the school that my two boys have gone to, they're very diverse, right? Ethnically diverse. And one of the things that just came up recently was my son was talking to his counselor about potentially taking some dual enrollment classes, and the response to him was, "Oh, I wouldn't do that. It's a waste of time. Those credits won't transfer." And I just wonder how many students are being told that. So, anyways, I'll pass it back on over to you, Erica, and
Awesome. Okay, so I packed a lot into this section, so I'll probably talk very quickly, but thank you for sharing the student perspectives, so important here. So I want to spend a little bit of time sharing how JFF is contributing to the dual enrollment movement alongside with our partners and kind of what we're testing in the field. So JFF launched what we're calling Pathways of Prosperity Network. We launched that network in 2012. And it's here that we work alongside and we convene all sorts of partners, ranging from K-12, post-secondary leaders, business, industry leaders, workforce development, other intermediary organizations in the space, state, local governments, right? This really is a cross-sector movement. And it's really to support building, designing, implementing, and scaling education to career pathways. So, what I mean by that is we want more young people to complete high school, to attain a credential with value in the labor market, and launch right into a meaningful career. And our work in this space has always been grounded by this framework that you see here. In particular, dual enrollment is embedded as a critical feature in secondary to post-secondary integration. We're really focusing here on these two systems, K-12 post-secondary, to be integrated in a way with aligned curriculum, aligned credits, funding, policies, practices, so that that question around transferability, that's no longer a question that you and others are hearing, Tanya. And this is really where we can start testing dual enrollment. Next slide. So one of the most troubling trends we're seeing emerge from some research is that enrollment patterns within career and technical education, they're not aligned to the meaningful careers that have high labor market returns, right? So there's a sizable gap between the supply of graduates and labor market return in some fields. And so this is why we believe the first step to embedding dual enrollment in high school pathways and education to career pathways is to really ensure that the courses are leading toward promising credentials. And then we can backward map to open doors and to accelerate progress toward that achievement. So we often do this mapping at JFF with individual post-secondary institutions, or we do a regional approach. Many colleges, each individual college, tend to have different requirements for different degree programs. And we have a tagline that we love to say again and again at JFF, which is no random acts of dual enrollment. So this mapping helps prevent that from happening. Next slide. So I'm going to get just slightly weedy here, but I think it's going to provide some good context. So door opener courses, we define them, they provide foundational industry exposure, and they apply to the highest number of options for a post-secondary credential within a career pathway. So these are courses that are especially beneficial for students who might be interested in an industry, let's say healthcare, but they don't know the specific career they want to pursue. So sure of the specific healthcare degree. Oftentimes, these courses are general education courses. They can also be foundational technical courses. I'm going to give you just a very quick example. So when we did this type of mapping in healthcare for one of our college partners, we found that across all the healthcare degree options the community college had, and I think there were like 20 plus different degree options, Comp 1 was required against 21 of those options, human anatomy 16, human physiology 12, elementary stats 11, medical terminology for 9 of those degrees. So we would consider those 5 courses door opener dual enrollment courses. If a student took any one of those courses, there's a really good chance that they'll count toward a degree they end up pursuing in health. Next slide. But we know that offering dual enrollment courses alone doesn't guarantee students are taking courses that move them toward promising credentials. And that's where accelerator dual enrollment comes in. So again, I'm going to go back to my healthcare example. Of the 5 door opener courses that I listed, we found that 3 of those courses fell under a health degree program that, by using labor market information, tell us that they are promising credentials. So as we're thinking about the ways that partners are having conversations about what type of dual enrollment coursework to offer high schools, this is the type of information that's really helpful as they begin to align their program of studies. Courses offered should be the most intentional and the most valuable for students. Next slide. Okay, so this is where the really exciting stuff happens. So we've been testing different dual enrollment models with our partners across the country to propel the positive impacts through what we're naming as dual transformation. So leaning into the dual enrollment practices that we know work today and how do we do more of them, while at the same time developing new strategies, new models through innovation that will hopefully reshape tomorrow. So we've been very fortunate that over the last 6 years, federal funding through the Education, Innovation, and Research Grant have supported these 5 projects that you see here. I'm going to very quickly talk about 2 of them. Next slide, please. I'm excited to share this one because this one is about Minnesota, where Maxwell took his dual enrollment. So in Minnesota, JFF and our partners are training college instructors on how to embed social emotional learning strategies into both English and math dual enrollment courses that are taught exclusively online. Online dual enrollment is getting a lot more attention lately. The Community College Research Center recently published a piece on online dual enrollment that really explores 4 strategies for how to get higher quality online dual enrollment, one of which is how are instructors fostering classroom interactions. And that's exactly what we're testing out in Minnesota. Next slide. So in this work, we're focusing on 4 SEL behaviors: encouraging students to build relationships, to have a growth mindset, to solve problems, and to self-manage their learning and needs. So instructors are trained on how to embed these strategies that you see here into existing dual enrollment coursework. So the SEL stuff doesn't feel like something extra that the teacher has to do, something extra that the student has to do. It's really embedded in the coursework itself. So in listening to these instructors talk about what they're doing and what they're learning from this pilot, it actually made me realize how SEL is hopefully very likely to have a positive impact on academic outcomes. And what we're seeing is that these are actually transferable skills to the workplace, right? So for example, in a team building exercise, instructors are assigning students to provide real-time feedback to their peers via draft assignments, right? So yes, this is building that peer-to-peer relationship, which can be very difficult in a virtual setting, but it's also preparing them to be providers of and receivers of feedback, which can be very valuable in the workforce. Next slide on this model. So here's what an instructor is saying about an exit ticket activity that they implemented in one of their courses. So this is a way to do an emotional check-in, and it prompts students to both notice and name their feelings. Another fascinating kind of positive outcome of doing these emotional check-ins has been instructors knowing in real time when students might be feeling disengaged or feeling overwhelmed in their dual enrollment course. It's this kind of constant feedback loop that has prompted some real talk within the colleges about what's the needed support systems that help students not only complete the course, but also want to persist, like want to take more dual enrollment in future semesters. So again, something that is directly influential for the students and for their own learning, but we're also seeing this kind of wider ripple effect of improving the system around the students. So last example I'll share, this is the last of the 5 innovations I want to share today, is this one we're doing across multiple states, and it's really scaling dual enrollment by strengthening the community college leadership and transforming the ways that community college themselves are operationalizing and systematizing dual enrollment to streamline and centralize all of these activities. The underscore here is scale, 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 significant scale, economies of scale. So we're pushing and helping community colleges develop dual enrollment hubs. So how do we develop shared regional dual enrollment agreements? Typically, business as usual right now is these one-to-one agreements between a college and one high school. Sometimes a community college or any college could have up to 20, 40 individualized, customized MOUs with each high school. That can get very complicated. How do we create staffing models that solve for the shortage of qualified dual enrollment instructors? How do we allow instructors to travel flexibly across all sorts of districts? And how do we collapse course catalogs, right? How do we only offer strategic dual enrollment courses to ensure that students are earning the most valuable college credit, that a school counselor would never have to question the transferability, the value add of a college credit because they can ensure that they're strategic. So those are just some of the very many things that we're testing through this big model. And Tanya, I think I turn it back to you.
Yeah. So again, I'm turning it back to Vashti and Maxwell about like, as you're hearing about like some of the work that they're doing and things like that, what are your thoughts on how like this will impact dual enrollment? Do you like, are these things that you had, you wish you had? I'm just curious a little bit from your perspective, how that, like what you're seeing when you see this, what your process is. Vashti, we'll start with you first because Maxwell started first last time.
That's what I was thinking too. No worries. Yeah, so I honestly am really excited to see all this work being done. I mean, being able to have cost better lowered or not at all, streamlining student recruitment efforts would be amazing because I know that's where that's how being able to talk to them, it's different from just like hearing about it, but having someone that's trying to guide you and trying to get you involved in it, it's way different. Um, and really beneficial. And then also, I also identified back when we were talking about how staffing is very hard in high schools, especially in rural areas. I think being able to go to the community college and get like, if not better, education in a certain area, it's going to be way better and way, way more cost efficient. So yeah, I'm really excited to see all the work being done. Obviously, I wish I could have this opportunity when I was younger, but I'm really excited for the younger generation to have this. And yeah, I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, so I noted a few things as well. First off, in terms of credit importance in general, I had the fortunate blessing of having a very, very good advisor. She told me to get like specific general credit classes out of the way. I got my associate's degree in liberal arts of sciences, right? And that was wonderful because now I'm entering into the University of Minnesota with all the general stuff, which knocked down like an entire year. Right, that's incredible. It really, really is, especially when things are getting so expensive like they are. Um, and then I also noted that you guys are talking a lot about awareness. I love that. I really do think that that is important in the rural and otherwise areas, right? One of the biggest things that I support with dual enrollment is the fact that students in high school just don't understand sometimes that college is different from high school, right? And there are a lot of people out there that do not like their high schools, right? They can't stand their high schools. They can't stand what they're going through, right? And they, through that, get burnt up. I know a tragic amount of friends that have given up on education, dropped out, non gone to college, whatever else it may be, because of their high school experiences. Through that, that's why I think dual enrollment is really important on the awareness side of it. And then also personal growth. That's another thing too. You can do clubs at your college when you're in dual enrollment. That's something that is not made aware enough to the students sometimes. I got elected to be the president of my student government at my college. And it was one step at a time being like, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? And it was only like, if you get elected, if you get elected, if you get, and I got elected over and over and over again. And then it was just like, boom, now you can, right? And I say that to say this, there should be more awareness on that side of it too, which is that personal growth happens through the interpersonal connection that you can make at your campus. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you again.
The fact that you were a student, the student president of like as a senior in high school of the community college. says a lot. All right. Hand it back on over to you, Anna.
Awesome. Yes, very impressive. And thank you both for sharing your perspectives and insights. So helpful to bring in the voices and perspectives, like young people who went through dual enrollment programs and considerations for us to think about moving forward. So really appreciate that. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about some policy and advocacy work that JFF is doing in partnership with a lot of our national partners in the field. So one thing to put on your radar is that JFF is one of the co-founders and steering committee members of the College and High School Alliance. This is a group of national organizations who have come together and really decided to push for and advocate for good policy infrastructure federally as well as across states. It is our North Star that every state and the federal government has a policy framework that ensures student access, participation in high quality college and high school programs or dual enrollment programs, and that we're able to expand access to all geographies, all student populations, to ensure that the makeup of those in high schools are being really reflected in these programs as well. When we think about who's involved with the College and High School Steering Committee, these are the lists of organizations that make up the steering committee. So JFF is one, including Achieving the Dream, Advanced CTE, BARD colleges, Middle College National Consortium, and NACEP. So these are folks on the steering committee, but we do have a broader just coalition. So if you're interested in getting on our listserv because you want regular updates about what's happening in the field regarding dual enrollment policy, I would highly encourage you to sign up and to join because there's a lot of good work happening. And here is just a quick snapshot of a state policy framework that the College and High School Alliance put out a few years ago to help guide a lot of the work that we're doing with states. And the framework is really based on where we're seeing needs in terms of policy development. So one being around really pushing states to think about developing a dual enrollment goal at the state level and building up their data systems, really thinking about program integrity, financing and funding, course availability, and transfer, instructor capacity, and navigational supports. And this really sort of bleeds into a lot of the policies that we're advocating for at JFF and with our partners. So when we think about our state level policy priorities, I'll walk through these very quickly. One is around improving data systems. We think states need to do a lot better job in this space. We are seeing states track data around access, but are lacking on metrics when it comes to persistence and ultimately success of dual enrollment students. So we want to see more data available there, and that's publicly reported. We want to see better policies around credit transfer. This is actually something we hear regularly across states as this being an issue. And I think it's actually not just an issue in dual enrollment, it's really an issue across the broader higher education system that needs to be tackled. And a lot of those stresses are kind of funneling down to dual enrollment. We want to see policies around removing student costs for dual enrollment. I mentioned earlier that a lot of states offer these opportunities for free, but it's not the case across the board. In some areas, students are paying for these courses. So we want these to be no cost to students. And we also want to ensure that at the K-12 level and the college, that they're properly being reimbursed as well, that no one system is losing out on funding as a result to these programs. Because when that happens, then it really breaks down that partnership. You'll have one of the systems sort of back away saying, hey, this doesn't financially make sense for us. So we want to see better state policies around costs. We want to see better policies around aligning courses to workforce needs, to credentials of value, to strategic dual enrollment, like Anna talked about earlier. We want to see better policy around expanding qualified instructor pool for these courses. This is another challenge that we hear often across states is that they want to expand these offerings, but they don't have the instructors available to offer these courses. So more there. Strengthening student supports is another big policy priority. So that includes robust counseling, transportation in many cases, especially if these offerings are being held at the college. Students need access to get there. Books and covering fees is also another thing that we'd like policy to cover. And then the last main bucket is around funding innovation. So a lot of the work that we're able to do at JFF, we'd like to see more of those dollars support innovation, as well as to support intermediaries doing this work. It can be a big lift to develop these partnerships across secondary, post-secondary, and workforce, and an intermediary can be a strong entity to come in and help align systems and get everyone on the same page. So these are a few of our state policy priorities. A couple additional thoughts on the state side is that we are seeing more and more states build in dual enrollment into their state accountability system. So if you're interested in this topic, our partner Advanced CTE put out a resource on this. And they found that currently 42 states include dual enrollment success or participation in their accountability system as a part of either ESSA, Perkins 5, or at the state level. We think that this is positive progress. And we're seeing dual enrollment being one of the main indicators in that broader college and career pathways readiness space around that's really emphasized within ESSA, the federal law governing K-12. However, accountability systems alone are not going to be the thing to ensure quality and access. It's an important starter at the state level, but more is needed, just like I talked through on the prior slide. So zooming now to federal, a couple of things to note up front is that when we look across some of the main education federal laws that are in place, there are areas within those laws where dual enrollment is an allowable use. So technically states and or local regions could use some funding, whether that's through ESSA, funding through the titles 1 through 4 there can allow for some usage of funds to go to dual enrollment. In Perkins 5, it's also allowed at the state and local level to expand CTE dual enrollment that aligns to workforce pathways. And in higher ed, the Higher Education Act, there's one small provision in there within the Gear Up grants that could technically go towards dual enrollment. However, when we have been talking with states and regions, very few are actually leveraging any of these resources for dual enrollment because dual enrollment is one activity amongst a long list of activities that states could be leveraging these dollars for. And we know it can take a lot of resources to stand up these programs and make them of quality. So by and large, when we're talking about and seeing expansion across states, it's really being driven by state level investments, not through these federal laws. So as a result, here are a few of our federal policy priorities. The first one being really pushing for the establishment of a dedicated federal funding stream to expand dual enrollment across the country, to help states really build up their dual enrollment infrastructure and to expand access to more populations. So that's a big one that we're pushing for, and would love to work in partnership with other orgs on this as well. And we'll be digging into this more with the College and High School Alliance. Another key area that we would like to see, and this is more on the executive branch side, are incentives around strategic dual enrollment. Again, we don't want random acts of dual enrollment. We want to ensure these courses count towards a good pathway. So thinking about ways to the federal government could incentivize that. And the other big bucket is around advancing teacher credentialing, additional funding support to enable teachers to earn dual enrollment credentials. So those are the big areas federally, with funding being probably at the top of the list. So I will pause there. I think that concludes our formal slides. So happy to open up for more reflection as well as questions.
While we're waiting for questions from others, I'm just like, as you're talking about some of the access to like transportation and then work books, like I'm curious from Maxwell and Vashti, like your perspective on that, because I just having like one of our priorities at the Today's Students Coalition is trying to increase access to public transportation for college students, and especially in rural areas where a lot of these programs are. um there is not a bus station or a public transportation system like within miles, 5 miles or more, is for students to be able to get to the campus for that. So that was one thing that kind of stood out to me. And then the other is, Anna, as you've talked about doing some of these like more than like let's do it virtual, but there's a lot of rural areas that still struggle getting access then to the technology necessary to be able to offer virtual. And so these create huge barriers for students to be able to access that kind of like support. And so I'm just curious, Vashti and Maxwell, if you saw that with your peers or yourselves, and then also like, yeah, I just 100% support, like agree with like like the conversation that has to take place. Like there's multiple conversations that have to take place around some of this.
Yeah, so I think it's really an amazing question as to the public transit side of it, because like my town, I think our nearest place where you could get like the bus stop is like half-hour drive. Like it takes such a far ways to do it. And that's why like I mean I think I'm like really kind of small town. So like because of that, that's kind of where that online thing kind of comes in, right? Where I know some people that did the transit, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier, where it's like these community and technical colleges, like they're kind of in our area, where like even some of the smallest towns that are like in the different states across our country, like they still have maybe like a half hour. Because like they're very, very spread out. And I think that's probably a part of the reason why there's such a focus and a directive toward these 2-year institutions. And I'll say too, with like technical colleges specifically, I know a lot of people that have been going for technical trade, like plumbing, dental, et cetera, that directly go back to the rural economies. So yeah, I think overall though, when it gets to be like really, really rural, I think one of the big solutions has been online, at least from my experience.
Yeah. And I don't think you're one of the few. I think that there's a lot of very rural areas that struggle with that same issue. So,
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm very lucky that my high school actually had bus schedules, like school buses. At lunch period, they would take us to and from the college campus, but um, we had a time where we didn't have those, like my first half of being there, and it's like a 2-hour walk from the high school to the thing. And it's kind of like it used to be like a freshman to like higher up like that a senior would like walk with them to and fro just to show them where it's at and how to get there. So I had the opportunity. I had to walk it a couple times, so it's not a big deal. It definitely is sort of like, especially if you don't have a vehicle, because I just bought a vehicle, thank goodness, in my college year, and that's not a very, like you said, not an option for a lot of students. A lot of families are working during the time college is happening. I would say that another pro of being concurrent enrollment is being able to get an extra job. I don't know if that's something that's been on anybody's radar, but it definitely helped me support my family and myself throughout high school, being able to have that extra time to work and get some extra money to afford college in the future and all that stuff. But yeah, definitely transportation is a huge issue. I actually took the public bus to college recently before I got my car, and it is really hard to manage because sometimes buses don't even show up. I've had it like happen like 5 times in like the last year when I was using the system that they just didn't show up and I missed class because that day. And it really like affects like mental health as well when you feel so disadvantaged. And it's like you said, it's definitely a opponent to not going to college anymore, dropping out pretty soon. And then to talk about the access to technology, I'm also very lucky to be in a community that supports me. I actually have a free computer right now through Adelante Connect, which is an amazing program that gives high-speed internet connections to houses that need them. You have to like send them your taxes and stuff just to prove, but I mean, I got it, so I'm not complaining. And laptops too, I was really needing a laptop. So there's definitely people out here doing the work. We just need to expand our reach and support them in the best way they can. But yeah, definitely not having access to internet sucks. I've had experience with that. But yeah, I've got to say that the work is being done. And like everybody says, we need to collaborate because just to have this be on one organization is a lot. And yeah, I really appreciate the conversation we're having. And thank you for letting me be a part of it and give my part to it. So yeah.
we'll open it up. I haven't received any questions in the chat, so if nobody has questions, then I'm going to ask another question. So I'll give people a second to see. All right, I'm going to give one question that I'm going to ask all of you before we end. And my question is, if there is one thing, if you could fix one thing about dual enrollment, like if you were like, this is like the one thing that like would make such a huge difference, what would that be? So I'll give you a second, and then Anna or Erica, you might have it like off the top. Anna looks like she's like ready to go, but maybe I'm like reading into it.
Well, my face was, I want to fix everything that Erica had on that list.
Right.
Like all of them. I think what I'm most excited and intrigued to learn from our test point around dual enrollment hubs, I think there's a lot of promise there. I think it's taking all of the somehow separated ad hoc activity that's happening in the community of colleges or the college system. We just happen to be working with community colleges in all that it takes to do dual enrollment. And if we can streamline that, operationalize it, coordinate it in a way that removes some of the redundancy, some of the red tape, some of the stumbling blocks that unfortunately, because there's not this steady, stable funding stream, it's like every year it's the same conversations. How are we, which courses are we funding? Which instructors are available? All the way to how are we doing student IDs this year, right? It's the same conversations. If we can somehow operationalize this where it just becomes business as usual, both for the college and for the high school side, I think there's tremendous opportunity there to really scale.
Mm-hmm.
So my
Yeah.
answer is fix everything, I think.
No, yeah. I would probably lean towards, I would have a hard time too.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the fix everything, fix a lot camp. But I think one area that I think needs a lot of attention, and it was touched on throughout the discussion, is around the awareness piece. There's still far too many young people and their families that just don't understand what dual enrollment is. They don't know if it's being offered or not in their district. There's a lot of reservation around, is this for me? Is it not for me? So I think if we can get better navigational supports, advising and awareness, that would go a long way. And yeah, much more to be done too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I can I love the awareness. I think I totally agree. The probably one of the biggest central points. Like I know there are entire organizations that are founded around the idea of spreading the word about dual enrollment. And I think in addition to that too, there should be, I don't know if reform is the right word to use, but something along the lines of reform in terms of advising. I really believe so because like I had the honor, the blessing of going to an online school out of the Twin Cities, high school wise, which didn't really have that draw to keep their good students in. You know, they got like the best grades. A lot of the local schools do. You know, a lot of the local schools do. And I know people, including my older siblings, both of them, that never went to the online schools. And actually one did technically, but that was like during COVID. But anyways, like what they did was they were told that they were limited in the amount of credits that they were allowed to take, you know. And the fact is, legally, you know, that doesn't exist. I mean, it's literally just like a almost lie that they give out to people for the sake of keeping the good students in because they get good grades, they get good ratings, and that's how it is. And I think that not all schools are the same. Definitely, you know, I know that's definitely not. I'm not saying all schools, but I'm saying many of them. You know, need to make sure that the advisors are aware of the actual laws, that they're really truly having the best interests of the students in mind. So that's the thing I'd say.
Thank you.
I also would like to follow that up with like similar lines of awareness. I like to like focus. I also agree that advising is super crucial, but who they're targeting, in a sense, because obviously, I don't know, you guys had the same issue, but like kids don't want to do anything in high school. They like you need to push them to do anything, and it's the parents that help push them. It's the siblings. It's them. Having like a communication streamline with them. And also just like obviously getting more students in concurrent enrollment because the best way to sort of get more awareness is by having more people in the program. And then how I see it is that when like one kid does it, their parent sees it and like, oh, and they like, I know everybody knows, they brag about you. They're like, oh my God, she does concurrent enrollment. And then other parents are like, oh, what's that? And then that just gets the communication rolling and starts opening it up to not just being something that's for like the rich high school or like high schools in the city. It kind of shows that like there is this opportunity here and it's for you. And it's like, if my kid could do it, your kid could do it. So I think that's one way, if that makes sense. But yeah, thank you.
No, I agree. I think that